So I might just kick off there, guys, and say good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this morning's webinar based on the do's and don'ts when engaging with UK retail. So I will say that this is, for some of you that have been joining the last number of webinars, this is a little bit different to our last series in that the last ones have been very much focused on building your brand awareness online, whereas this one is very much focused on in-store. So when engaging with retailers at the beginning versus in negotiations versus when you actually, or if you're very successful to build that brand partnership, how you should best nurture and look after it then as well. So for this webinar, we have teamed up with Rarely Heard Voices, a fabulous consultancy that will come on and introduce themselves shortly. But before we begin, a couple of housekeeping points. This webinar, as we were saying there, will be recorded, and each of you as attendees will receive a link to the recording over the next 24 hours. It will also be uploaded onto our Enterprise Ireland UK YouTube channel, where you can see the rest of our webinars that have taken place over the last number of weeks also. So to briefly introduce myself, if there's any newcomers that are listening in, my own name is Rachael. I am the Market Advisor for Consumer Retail for Enterprise Ireland UK, based in our London office. So I support Irish companies on their UK scaling journeys. So if you have any questions post-webinar, do feel free to reach out to myself and connect if you're not already connected. Just to flag, this is our fabulous panel of speakers that will be joining us today. So to give a big thank you to Duncan, to Jill, to Laura, to David, to Brendan and to Simon. I can't wait to hear your insights, as I'm sure the rest of the webinar can't also. With this, I'd like to hand over to Brendan for your number of remarks, and then we'll kick off the webinar.
Rachael, thank you. My name is Brendan Dorian. It's my pleasure to be among you all, and we're going to deliver for you a fast-paced journey through initial engagement with department stores through to turning the final screw in a fixture if you're fortunate enough to secure in-store physical representation. The colleagues that we have on the call with us today have a minimum 3 decades of experience in working in or with department stores. I'm told that I look the youngest of all of us, so I'll take that as a given. Thank you. David, Laura, Duncan, Jill, and of course, Natalie. I should also point out, as Rarely Heard Voices, we've worked with Enterprise Ireland in the UK and in the United States for some time. And I have to tell you, as an independent voice, Enterprise Ireland works so hard on a daily basis to advocate for and advance the cause of all small and growth enterprises in Ireland. Please take that as a given. The whole of Enterprise Ireland works so hard on your behalf. With that, I'll hand over to Jill Butterworth as our first speaker. Jill, over to you.
Thanks, Brendan. And delighted to see everybody. I think we've got a slide coming up. So actually, I've got 4 decades experience. So I'm probably older than some of you on this call, which is pretty frightening. My first 25 years were working as a buyer, and the latter 17 on the other side, wholesale, retail and business development. And the reason I think it's really important to explain to you that I've been a buyer is that it's very much easier for me to sit the other side of the desk because I know what the buyer is going to think, I know what the buyer is going to ask. The difference today with when I started is there are far fewer buyers out there. Teams have been put together. Yesterday was a classic example. I was in Tunbridge Wells seeing a lovely department store group called Hoopers. And the reason for this slide is this came out of a conversation I had with the non-apparel buyer who buys all of hard and all of soft for Hoopers, who works for a ready-to-wear buyer who does all of women's wear. And they are absolutely running ragged. So I said to her, you must get approached all the time by brands. What makes a brand's email stand out? And she says, I need headlines. I need a brand image. I need a recommended retail price. I need an intake margin, and I need differential. She said, because I get so many emails, Jill, and I've got to keep buying. I've got to keep seeing brands. I've got to keep going out there. So I guess my advice to all of you, if you're doing that first email, make sure you've got an image that perfectly captures the mindset and approach small brands must adopt when pitching to department stores. And it's all on here on the slide. You've got to be bold, and you've got to be bold, and you've got to be concise. Buyers are under such time pressure, it is crazy. And she said, I can't even open all my emails. And I said to her, do you let brands know if they're not successful? And she said, no, because if I do, Jill, they'll come back and ask me why, and then I'll go back and then they'll come back to me again and I haven't got the time. So you've got to get it right first time. They want headlines, clean, compelling cues that instantly communicate your value proposition. So that's why I'm saying brand image, RRP, intake margin, differential. And then they've got an opportunity to come back to you. Don't send them the whole brand deck. They won't read it. So don't dumb things down. It's about respecting the buyer's time and really framing your proposition through their lens. And the first impression really, really counts. And often you're talking to two buyers, because you can be talking to the marketplace buyer and you can be talking to the store buyer. Because often, and Duncan will go into this, it's through the marketplace that you can get into the stores. So you've got to think about how you're approaching the partner as well. And I'm going to hand over to Duncan now, who's going to talk to you about how he approaches department stores. Duncan is the strategy and partner director for Sleath of Cornwall, and we are working together helping on international growth. So I guess I also want to say to you, $200 million brands still need help getting into department stores. So it's not about the size of your business, it's about how you communicate and about who knows who, because relationships in this business are paramount. So thank you for listening. And Duncan, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you, Jill, and hello, everybody. And just reiterating what Jill has said, regardless of your size, you still need that support in getting in front of the buyers. And, you know, we also have had exactly that story where buyers have limited time, and it's really important to keep it concise. So I'm going to do a very quick whistle-stop tour of our CSEL brand pack. And hopefully as we go through, there's a few hints and tips that you'll be able to reflect on in terms of your brand engagement. And really, this is the next step. So as Jill has already alluded to, once the email, concise and to the point, has got you in the door, it's then time to do the brand pack piece. So we will share the screen now. And hopefully you will all see my screen in a moment. There we go. I'm going to whiz through this. This is our brand pack that we use in Sleath Cornwall. Kicking off, first of all, I think this slide is really, really important. All of you as founders, as creators, you have all of that passion and that knowledge of the brand and all of the love and also the pain and challenges that have taken to create the brand and get it off the start. And it's about really sinking all of that knowledge into some really clear bullet points that kind of articulate your brand story and what's important to you. So in here, we've done our manifesto, which you can see there. So I'd urge you to think about how you tell that story, about where you've come from and what's the key important parts of your brand that you can chat through in one slide. And the essence of the brand pack is being able to tell that story quite visually. It's your opportunity to articulate your brand personality. So you can see on this slide, well, we've done different images of how our brand shows up in different touch points, and you'll have similar ways in all of your brands. But again, keeping it visual, keeping it quite concise. Brand adjacencies are really important. We call them brand friends. So it's not necessarily just your competitors, but it's also those brands that give you creative inspiration, and also those brands that you may well sit on the same floor in a department store and that you would be happy that your brand sat next to. So again, this is about setting the scene, reinforcing your brand positioning where you sit within that department store. Product, as always, is really, really key. And in here, as Jill said, the buyers have got a plethora of different options and categories. But in here, what we're trying to tell you and try to share is product highlights. So what's your famous 4 categories? What's your killer categories? What's your kind of key shapes, your key fabrics, or what's your key volume lines that can really tell that story and that point of difference for your brand to the buyer in quite a quick way. And you can see here on this slide, this is our famous 4 at Sleath, our rain, our dresses, our knitwear, and our sailor tops. So again, being able to articulate your product story in a few words. Moving on from that, buyers want to understand what your total range looks like, how it's divided, and also price is really important. And again, really putting the time in on price to benchmark against the competitor set or the brand friends that may be in the department store that you're looking at, and also particularly our product range, being really clear at where your price point goes up to. So again, you're reinforcing where you need to be sitting in that department store. Having brand images and assets is also really important. It's a really easy, quick way for the buyer just to see some of your key product, get a aesthetic for the brand, and also just reinforces what your brand story is. And then something about your customer, again, really important that we put the time in to understand who your customer is and how that dovetails into the customer that the department store is also resonating with. And then if you do have national or international presence, again, it's really good to add that in to show the story of how your brand is turning up across the world, and reinforces that your brand on the move for the department stores. And then I think finally, the really important bit is operationally, don't promise what you can't deliver. And I think as you go through the journey with different department stores, it's about trying to keep it simple and being able to deliver what you are able to at whatever part of the journey that your brand is in. And often that means starting with wholesale, getting a foot in the door potentially with a small edit rather than a full collection. If you're able to do marketplace, as Jill alluded to, that is often a starting point for department stores. And then once you've got a couple of seasons of sales, then they will consider a wholesale buy or a larger store presence. But again, the really key bit is being able to be clear with the department store what is the art of the possible and what you can deliver. Don't underestimate the importance of delivery to the department store. If you don't get the delivery right and it's too complicated operationally, you won't get the sales, and then the department store will come back and not place future seasons buys. So again, that's a really important consideration. And the other bit I think is also worth noting is marketing, particularly now with the variety of brands that are trying to get into department stores. Those brands are able to show up and put some marketing spend behind that, whether that's in store or through different online mechanics, that really demonstrates to the department store that you are serious in the partnership and really pushes onwards for your brand within the department store. And just finally, being in person is really important. Again, even if it's just a coffee or for 5 minutes or getting in and showing some product, if you get the opportunity, don't turn that down. I think that's it from me. I will stop sharing the slides.
Duncan, I'd like to come in and build on what you and Jill have said. Respectful of confidentiality without mentioning names of department stores, can you and Jill have a conversation about how persistence and tenacity is so important when it comes to getting that first meeting, respecting also that we're offering advice on this call on the basis that it will be ignored. You all have to do your own thing. Each of your brand, you have to do what suits your business and your personality. But to that point, Duncan and Jill, on tenacity, can you speak to that, and also about showing up in the US to do shows in studios and so forth?
Yeah. Jill, you're on mute, which anyone that's ever met Jill will know is...
It's very unlike as David, there's no need to laugh. So I'll tell one story. There's a wonderful company, cruise liners, very upmarket. Because of relationships that we have within Rarely Heard Voices, we managed to secure a meeting, Duncan, right? And they came down to Winchester and they bought sea salt for the cruise ships. When they left, Duncan's sales manager said to Duncan and I have been trying for 10 years, Jill, to get them in front of us. 10 years. You've come along and you've got them down, not only have you got them down, but we're going straight into quite a large number of ships. So that's the relationship piece that's so important. Now, Duncan can talk to you about the tenacity piece, not giving up, and how we went about it with America. if you like.
Yes, I think to the tenacity piece, you've got to be in it for the long haul. We've been very lucky to work with some of the big department stores in the US, but that hasn't happened overnight. That's taken over a year of slowly building persistent emails, reaching out, getting face-to-face time when buyers have a few moments to do so. And it's slowly built, and we're now in a great position where we're in all of the major retailers within the department store scene in the US. And I just add to that a very famous department store based in New York. We have only been working for a few months, and the team are actually out there at the moment. They don't often take calls. They don't often take meetings, but we've had a couple of hours with them yesterday. And we've maximized that because we took product, we set up a showroom, we put that investment in, we flew people over, they told the brand story, they told the product, and that is straight away recognized in the department store's feedback to us, that we're willing to engage. They can see that we're putting in the effort, and you can already see that's beginning to set the scene and set the foundations for accelerated growth in the future. That, you know, you've got to take the opportunities where you can to get the face-to-face time in.
And Duncan, I agree with that. And I think what's interesting is before the meetings that happened this week, 18 months ago, you and I started transatlantic travel to engage the conversations. What happened this week was 18 months later of you and I having done those trips initially. I did them alone first, zoomed you in, then you came out, and then the team have gone out. So that's taken 18 months to make it happen. And that's with 3 large department store groups now we're now operating with. So that's going back to Brendan's point, and a good timed question. You've got to keep going. And if you get to know it's not right now, keep going back. Work out the balance, because you don't want to upset and annoy, but keep going back and keep proving things. And one of the great things that, Duncan, you might want to quickly talk about is Zalando and how that's helped us in other marketplaces, proving that that model has worked for you.
Yes, so we have a very strong business with Zalando, and I think when you do have a gem of a partnership within your business or something you're able to kind of demonstrate as potential for your brand, being able to reference that with other department stores, particularly if they're in the same geographical space, really helps to demonstrate the opportunity that your brand has and the potential. And there's several European department stores, as Jill said, you know, we're in the start of that 18-month period with quite a few of them, but the fact that you're able to point to success that you have had in their market is really helpful to get the door open and start the conversation.
Thanks, Duncan. Thanks, Jill. I'll sum up this passenger conversation by saying that time is a currency, and the buyers want to spend that currency really carefully. So it's up to you to give them as much return on their investment as possible. And we're going to move over to Laura Brown now. Laura is a retailer whom I admired for so many years. I followed her star rise. She has been on both sides of the table. She's an outstanding retail executive, and I can't wait to hear what she's got to say. Laura, over to you.
Thank you so much, Brendan. That's very kind of you. Yes, I think as Brendan says, I've had the benefit of being on both sides of the table. Previously at Harrods as head of concessions, and then later retail director, and more recently at Aspinall. So actually partnering with department stores such as Harrods, Selfridges, John Lewis and Brown Thomas as well. I think really I've got a little bit of a build on what Duncan and Jill have both said. And I think for me, having sort of partnered with brands, one of the most important things is that real preparation of really starting to consider very carefully why you've obviously done the work on your brand, but why would the department store want your brand? What does it add to the range that they already carry? What sort of point of difference or USP will it bring? Because as a department store, you're not trying to add more competition. You're trying to add a differentiated range. and really create that wonderful edit that is perfect for the customer. So I think it really takes some careful consideration about how your brand is going to fit in that store. Practically, one of the things that I would really recommend that you do is actually hang out in the store. Spend some time there. Observe the customer. Look at their behaviours. Look at how they're shopping. Look at what they're purchasing. And if I could give you one really key piece of advice, chat to the sales team. There is no better information than you will ever get than talking to the sales associates in the department store. And it really will give you some fantastic insights, and it will give you some real pointers in terms of how you need to refine your pitch. I think it's absolutely, as Jill and Duncan have said, I think developing that compelling pitch is really key. But I think if it's a really important account, do your research. Don't email cold. Find somebody, anybody within your network that can get you that real personal connection, that can get you that attention, that will have that email read, because you only get that one chance so often to really impress. And if you've got a personal recommendation, it's just going to get noticed that much more. Equally, if it's a really important account, if there is any way, and I appreciate that this isn't always feasible, bring them to your house. It's really difficult to pitch to somebody when you don't have your product. But some of the most compelling pitches I have ever had is when I've been taken to the factory, or I've been taken to the company headquarters. The whole company have been clearly behind this pitch, so they all know what's going on and they all understand the importance of it. And you really get the sense as the department store just how much this matters and how much preparation has gone into it. It doesn't have to be fancy, but really just spending that time, creating that connection, and having some time to just chat and build that relationship, I think is really, really valuable. And probably the ones that really stand out to me are those times where we've had lunch, we've met the family, we've met people who are making the product in the factory, and then you really, really do feel it. And I think that follow-up, so if you are lucky enough to get that connection, think of this is a business, you really want to make sure that the follow-up, that the successes that you can share of any of the business that you've got elsewhere is really key. Share product, make sure that they got the opportunity to touch it and feel it, not just see it on a deck. You are selling a product that people are going to use and wear. So, this is a customer just as much as your future customer will be. So make sure that they can really get their hands on. And then I think, so assuming that you've been fortunate enough to get that connection, to get that opportunity, now you've got to actually make it work. And this is where the fun begins. But Duncan made the point, be operationally reliable. It might seem obvious, but it's amazing how many brands don't do this. They do all the hard work. They then deliver late, or they deliver in part. And these things really will not get your brand off to a good start. Deliver on time and in full. Be responsive. Make sure that you're following up, you're checking what's gone in, you're checking the delivery. Make sure that all the documentation that they need is there. That might sound simple, but actually, are there aftercare education? Is there product care details? Are those things there? Invest in sell-through. Now, again, I appreciate that this can be difficult, but I would also really think about investing in the people who are going to be selling your product. If you're coming in a wholesale, then the chances are it's going to be the store team that are selling your product. And the value of engaging them and really getting them excited and passionate and, most importantly, knowledgeable about your product is really important. These are going to be the people that were talking to your customers about your product. So how can you get them really understanding it, understanding the construction, the materials, how to care for it, how to fit it, get them wearing it. It might sound really simple, but it's, you know, just really getting those people excited and connected is going to make your product stand out in a sea of a lot of others. At this point, I would also really remember, particularly in those bigger department stores, to really engage with the personal shopping teams. If there's any stylist teams, any personal shoppers, you really want them, again, educated, informed, excited, and passionate about your product. And if you can, and again, Duncan mentioned this, find opportunities for marketing. Personally, in a department store, I would make those experiential. There's a sea of noise on social media and billboards and all of that, but actually being present, being in the department store and running events, personal appearances, construction demos, styling events, or even customization. It just adds an activity. It enables people to connect and engage. And it makes it more of an experience that people are going to remember and want to come back for. Again, it might seem like a simple one, but when you're starting out, be financially fair and flexible. These department stores may have limited budgets, they may have limited space. So being too rigid in what you want is going to make it quite difficult. If you start by being fair and flexible, offering decent margins, payment terms, and prepared to negotiate on things like minimum order quantities, it will make it a lot easier. If you also then have the opportunity to make stock adjustments, so look at what's working, look at what's not working, swatch things out, add sizes, get the feedback from the sales teams on what more they would like. What are people really getting excited about? And be dynamic if you can, and really try and improve that velocity. Introduce new drops. So, you know, department stores, a lot of department stores have a lot of regular clients. In Harrods even, we had customers that would come 52 times a year. They're very, very regular, and keeping it fresh is really important. There's no excitement in seeing the same thing for 3, 4, 5 months. So if you can, do small and frequent drops to keep it fresh, keep it interesting, and to give people a reason to keep coming back. And then I think if I was to sum up one final thing, don't just think of this as being a vendor. Think of it as being a partner. Get the people on side. Make it a really enjoyable relationship. Share information. Ask for feedback. Give ideas. You know, you can have so much fun. Over the years, working with different brands, I have done some of really exciting things that the brands had never even thought of doing, but because it was right for the store, right for the customer, and they had this creative passion and this absolute desire to make their brand work in this environment, it really was, we were really able to do some very exciting things and really push the boundaries of both the store and the brand. Retail is amazing, but you've got to really make sure that it's something that people really want to connect with and engage with. So I wish you all the best, and I hope some of that was helpful.
Laura, thank you. I'm going to come back to you in a moment and ask you to answer the question. What's the one thing that you remember a prospective partner doing for you as a buyer that made you say, actually, that's who I want to work with? Because people buy people. Before I do that, though, I'd like to build on something you said. Everyone on this call, you should be on LinkedIn. It's the accepted messenger within business, and you should be changing your LinkedIn backboard minimum weekly. You should be messaging on a daily basis, because the more messaging that you do, the more that your messages get seen. Your local baker your local butcher, your local fishmonger, they change their window every day. Why can't you? That's the first thing. Use LinkedIn as a really powerful tool. Second thing, I advocate this. I'm a networker at heart. Print a business card. Now, on our business cards, we went to the printers and we said, we want you to print a card. When people touch it, even before they look at it, they tell us, I love your cards. Now, Jill's had that experience. Davis had that experience. I've had that experience. Business cards are invaluable, especially in this modern age. And the thing that we do in our cards, one of the things we do, you'll see there's a small Union Jack there. Wherever our team are from, their flag goes on their card, whether it's Italy, Australia, America. And here's the thing, the Irish community of entrepreneurs have a similar, let's say, aesthetic as Canadian. People respect the artisanal quality of Irish craftsmanship. They respect the trustworthiness that goes with dealing with someone from the island of Ireland. And you should use these characteristics and exploit them to the fullest. I urge you. So Laura, back to you to answer that question. What's the one thing that a young company did for you as a buyer that made you think that's who I want to work with?
So goodness, this it's very hard to think of one, but I think the one that really stands out in my mind was in the very, very early days of Ted Baker. Ted Baker was a high street store, really wanted to get into Harrods. And one of the things that they did is we were very lucky. They took us to the ugly brown building, their big headquarters, an incredible place, very ahead of its time in terms of environment and culture. And we met with the team, we met with the buyer, we met with the designer, and they actually allowed us to work with the designer to design an exclusive capsule collection of evening gowns. Bear in mind that they were selling on average, an average selling price of around £200. We designed this gown that was retailing at £950, and some that were £1,200. They custom made every single one of them. They numbered them. They labeled them, made by Ted's mum, very sweet little personal labels, and brought them into the store. We did an event, a styling event, and we sold every single one of them. It was an enormous risk, but they had really understood that this was the place where they could do something different. It was the place that they could really test their boundaries, and they could really create some of this incredible theatre. So it was just a really, really wonderful collaboration, and it went on to be a very, very successful brand.
Thank you, Laura. So we've gone through the process of approaching a business. We've gone through the process of meeting with them and selling to them. Laura's spoken about how you then develop your business within the department store. Now we get to the commercial reality of you've got to make a profit and you've got to mitigate risk. Simon, who's on the call, has worked with David for 2 decades. David, if you like, was the front end. Simon was the gate that you had to get through to be able to sell your product because he protected House of Fraser commercially. So with that, Simon, I hand over to you to talk about the commercial framework within which all of the businesses on this call will have to work.
Thank you very much indeed, Brendan. Yeah, I'm Simon Duncan, founding director of SHD Solutions. And the key topics I just wanted to run through with you is the various commercial models that you need to be aware of. But first of all, as a way of introduction, my consultancy specializes in negotiation strategies, and some of the key clients that I work with on the brand side are the likes of Radley, Charles Tewett, Kurt Geiger, Emma Bridgewater, Aurora, etc. And with regards to the hosts, I work with New Look, Mara in Australia, Morley's, De Grucci, Browns of York, Daniels of Windsor, etc. And pre-setting up the consultancy, I was director of external business for House of Fraser, where I had the accountability for contractual negotiation of all the commercial and operational terms for brands that traded within the business, of which there's about 350 concessions and about 300 wholesale, with an annual turnover of 1.3 billion. So working with UK retailers, working with the department stores, the 3 commercial models I'm just going to go through are wholesale, consignment, and concession. Now, first of all, within the wholesale model, I mean, it's fairly straightforward, which I'm sure you guys are very familiar with, direct selling into the retailer. Laura has covered certainly the operational side of it very eloquently, but the commercial model is based on cost price and payment terms. However, you do also need to be aware that there may be other terms that they may well try to include. For example, settlement discount. In other words, the faster they pay you, the greater discount that they are going to demand. So if they pay you within 30 days, they may demand 5% discount. 45 days, they might demand a 2.5% discount. 90 days might be net. So the decision for you is actually cash flow versus margin. They may also include other terms such as marketing contribution, loyalty contribution, in other words, if they have a loyalty card, volume discounts, which could be retrospective. In other words, they look at it at the year end and then deduct a further percentage from you. And also if they have a central distribution in central warehousing, they may require a contribution towards that. However, in most cases, it's likely to be pure cost price and payment terms. Positive and negatives is running a wholesale model. Well, the positives, yeah, okay, it's straightforward deal. You sell the product, they purchase. But the negatives on it is that you, the brand, has limited control to maximize the opportunity, because obviously the host store, the department store, they stipulate how much they're going to buy, how they're going to merchandise it, how much, in other words, how much brand presence do you actually get, and they decide when or if to repeat on orders. And also the other key thing is that they have more control of when they may mark down your product for sale or promotional activity, which potentially could be damaging to your brand identity. With regards to concessions and consignment models, they're similar models, however differ with regards to the staffing and shop fit obligations. So both models work on a commission of net sales achieved, and I'll come back to the type of percentages that you should be expecting. And then they have a payment which is made post the sale. So you own the product throughout until the point of sale. The actual host store owns it for that split second it goes through the till, and that's just so that they can handle the VAT side of it. The payments, though, will be made usually at the end of the trading month plus a number of payment days. So for a concession or consignment, you could actually be making sales in January, which are then paid end of month, say plus 30 days. So in other words, you're not actually getting your payment, less the commission that you owe to the host, until the beginning of February. And it can actually move out further. I know at House of Fraser, we actually had payments were at the end of the month plus 60 days. So in other words, for a sale made in January, we're actually getting paid in March. These models, in terms of concessions and consignment, are very, very likely to also include additional terms. So it's very commonplace to have marketing contribution of 2% of your net sales, loyalty 1%. There may well be a merchant fee, in other words, banking facilities, which a host may charge 1% contribution. And then also something you really need to look out for is if they're going to demand a minimum guarantee from you. Now, minimum guarantee basically means, say, if there's a minimum guarantee set for, say, 100,000 sales with a commission rate of 26%, that's obviously 26,000. If you only achieve 80,000, obviously there's been a shortfall of 20K, and they will demand the commission on that shortfall as well. So in fact, you still end up paying 26,000 on 80K's worth of sales, which actually now is equivalent from not a 26% commission rate, but goes up to a 32.5% commission rate. However, just to reassure you guys, Minimum guarantees are becoming less common because they understand, hosts understand the onerous effect it has on brands, particularly in the current challenging retail climate. With regards to the differences on staffing and shop fitting, with a concession, a full-blown concession, that is down to you to fully staff with your own staff. Host will probably require the equivalent of 2 or 2.5 full-time equivalents, and also for you guys to pay for and put in a full shop fit. In other words, perimeter walls, freestanding fixtures, floor coverings, accent lighting, etc. With a consignment, this is where it changes. The consignment will actually be staffed by the host store, by the host store staff, but they may request a contribution from you. And with regards to the shop fit, either you will use the host's fixtures or you'll supply a degree of what's called soft shop fit. In other words, just freestanding fixtures. So coming back to that commission rates and having explained the difference between a concession and consignment, what you should really expect on a concession for apparel is somewhere in the region of 25 to 32% in bricks and mortar, and online between 35 and 42%. On accessories, slightly lower. In bricks and mortar, something between 22 and 28%, but still 35 to 42% online. And on home, lower still, probably around about 18 to 26% bricks and mortar and 30 to 40% online. There is one caveat on this. John Lewis. If you're dealing with John Lewis, they are demanding extremely high commission rates. I think at the moment they're looking at about 42%. And also be aware, this is just the commission rate we're talking about. You've still got on the added on marketing contributions, etc. The variances in the commission rates really depends on the grade of store that you're going to be trading in. So if you're going to be trading in the host store's flagship, then obviously they're going to demand a higher commission rate from you. With regards to commission rates on consignments, they're going to be pretty much in line with the concessions online commission rate, because obviously you're not going to be staffing. The positives and negatives of a concession consignment model, well, there are significant positives, and those are that you, the brand, are in control. You're in control of the ranging, you're in control of the volumes, the stock replenishment, the price architecture, the brand presence, particularly if you have a shop fit, and also indeed upselling. I think as Laura's mentioned, particularly if you've got your own staff there who are knowledgeable about your brand product, and also you're going to get a longer term commitment because there's fixed term notice terms.
Simon, can I ask you to be conscious of time, please?
Yeah, I'm just going to the end of this. And concessions in bricks and mortar can take a 150% plus what wholesale achieve, as they drive far higher densities, of which the host store is particularly going to be keen on. The negatives are investment in stock, although greater return, investment in staff, although brand staff drive sales, and in shop fit, although creates enhanced proposition. Contractual agreements, wholesale's fairly straightforward. It'll be a pro forma order with payment terms. Concessions will be more complex with space, staff, logistics, systems, customer complaints, procedures, etc. included. So in summary, there's 3 key models, various configurations within each model, direct sales but lack of control versus investment but with complete control to maximize return. So as we've said before, plan your sales pitch and plan your negotiation strategy. What does your brand offer that others don't? What model are you wanting to operate on? What commercials are viable to you? What's the balance of power? What's the mindset of the host? Think about what they require. What flexibility do you have in your negotiation? And ultimately secure the best value for money commercial terms that are viable for the longer term. So consider, plan how you're going to navigate through the negotiation. And ultimately, there's got to be a lot of respect, honesty, and trust, and building that partnership is absolutely key. So that's a very brief overview of the commercial models, and thank you.
Simon, thank you. I'm going to come to you, David, in a moment. We have 5 minutes on the physical build piece, and then Rachel will guide us through a Q&A. Simon, I've got one question for you, and I appreciate a brief answer. How should the brands approach the issue of the agreement? How much should they be spending on legal fees? How much time should they be taking on that agreement? I realize you're not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice. So an anecdotal overview is welcome.
Right. Well, host stores will have what they will call a standardized agreement. And I think really, to be honest with you, focus on the commercials. It's not going to be a lot of point trying to change the operational clauses within the contracts. So it really is having flexibility to be able to move around within the commercial elements of the agreement. And that's what I would say.
Thank you, Simon. Now we hand over to David Blakeney. David is a legend in British retail, especially in department stores and the physical exposition of your brand. David, you have 5 minutes, 300 seconds to give everyone the benefit of 30 years experience. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Blakeney. Most of my career, 30 years, nearly 30 years at House of Fraser. I ended up as Group Store Development Director. I was in charge of placing all the brands in the stores, in their locations, signing all their shop fits off, and going through the whole process of opening physically in the stores. Just a few little very quick pointers. I think Duncan touched about a really key thing: get the right location, have the right adjacencies. I think that was great advice from Duncan. It means everything. And I can tell you, if you're not in the right location, you'll be going back to them 6 months ago, but it's not working for us because we're in the wrong location. So I think that's critical. But a quick one thing, by the way, touching on some of the other points, always get a good store manager, because I can tell you how many times a brand wasn't performing, and Laura will say the same. And then you go, well, oh, the manager was off this week. Oh, we didn't have a very good manager, etc., etc. A store manager makes a concession or a consignment. As far as opening, it's a really simple process, actually. Opening any, and I looked at about 300 brands, and I signed off probably about nearly 10,000 shop fits over the years. There's just one thing, there's a process for every single department store. Just follow the process and what they tell you to do. It's just like any landlord's process. Some stores are really strict, Harrods and Selfridges, because the level of detail they want in a shop fit is far greater. Others are more flexible, and there's different types of flexibility in shop fits. But the key is just working with the store development teams to put in your shop fit. I would just say one thing: there will be idiosyncrasies, access, health and safety rules, etc. Some stores might have asbestos. You have to check the asbestos information, etc., etc. So just sort of look at the whole process from actually getting in the store, who's going to work. If stores have very good shop fitters anyway, you might want to use them a bit. And that's really now the last big thing here is that you'll probably be asked to send in a drawing pack, which will show what materials you're using. That's important. It will tell you, tell them they want to see all the detailed drawings, because normally you will be fitting within an envelope. So they'll want to know if you want to put your own floor down, that you've got to get all the heights right and the widths right of all the fixtures for the perimeter of the floor. They'll always ask certain rules. You have to have a certain space between fixtures for people with buggies, etc. But the finishes is quite important, and they'll always want to know what your look is. So the stronger you look, the better. I would always say to everyone, put your best foot forward, because that is your advertising of your brand amongst others. And if you're up against lots of other great brands, you want to stand out. You know, when we talk about some of the standouts, you know, Laura talks about Ted Baker. They were one of the best ever standouts. Superdry were very good in their day. But the thing about Ted Baker is they stood out and they made a difference because they used to do something a bit different in every store. So there's some great examples of different brands who who just show themselves to the best. And really, it's just the approval process is fairly good. The better the information, the more detailed it is, the quicker it is for approval, and allow plenty of time to have things changed and altered and get your costs right. I do a lot of work with lots of brands, helping them with the cost and getting the cost down, getting the right look. I did a big thing for Radley and Macy's, and there's ways of fitting in New York or America which are much better if you do it in a certain way, because it can be very expensive out there. They're the sort of things we do. And follow, if you work well with the store group, they'll work well back with you. And that's my summary.
David, thank you. That was really useful. We do have a number of questions on the Q&A. Before we get to that, David, what sort of expenditure would a brand be expected to invest if they were building their own physical fixture in a store?
It's quite hard to give an exact sort of, even an approximate figure. It depends on the size of the space. It depends on the type of department store you're in with what sort of adjacencies. But people will do it anywhere between, could be between 50,000 going up to 250,000, depending on how big the space is. But I think it really is, it's really just working out. Could be £100 a square foot, maybe. Some brands will be cheaper. It just depends. So it's good to do a bit of due diligence. If anyone's negotiating to go in a store and they know approximate space, to know what your expenditure, the first thing I would always do is do a rough template of a typical layout, get some rough costings before you commit. And that's do that feasibility first.
Thank you. So the other Q&A, we've got 6 minutes to race through them. So you're going to get some summary answers to your questions. Jill, I'm going to come to you first, then Laura, I'll come to you. So these are summary answers, everyone. We hope that you find them useful, but if you need more detail, don't hesitate to reach out to us through Rachel. So Jill, first question for you. Are there any trade shows in the UK that you would recommend for premium brands?
There's Scoop. There's Scoop, which is
Do
probably
buyers attend them?
Yeah, but the problem is there are trade shows. There's Pure, there's Scoop, but the reality is a lot of them don't attend. A lot of them go to the showrooms. So your other option is to use agents who have the relationship with the buyers. They'll have a multitude of brands in their showroom, but they're guaranteed that the buyers are going to come in because they're going to have a one-stop shop. So, and that probably is not dissimilar in terms of price to having a stand at somewhere like Scoop or Pure. But you don't get them all coming. So it is hit and miss, but those are the shows that I would probably do. Laura, do you have a view on that?
No, I think you're probably right. I think agents were probably the one. It just a bit easier sometimes
because people are coming in and they've got commitments in the.
Thank you. Laura, I'm going to come to you in a moment to ask you about how a brand should show its wholesale price. But Jill, staying with you, we have a question from a brand which is already selling through department stores in Ireland, though hasn't yet entered the UK space. Which department stores, and let's assume this is a mid to premium brand, and that's a sweeping assumption, which department stores would you approach?
Well, again, we're pretty limited in our department store choice now, Brendan, if I'm honest with you. You could either go somewhere through the AIS group, which has all the independent stores. A lot of them Simon was talking about just now. If you want to do a one-stop shop, and they have 2 shows a year in Birmingham that you could show at actually through the AIS. They got a percentage, but you'd reach the buyers of the smaller department stores there. Or depending on what the product is, it's either a Fenwick or it's a Harrods or Selfridges, but I don't know whether it's an BT or an Arnott to know where to fit them in really. But as I say, sorry, Brendan.
No, keep going.
So, but if you wanted to reach the biggest group of independents, it would be by going into the Association of Independent Stores. If you don't know who they are already, look them up.
Thank you. Laura, as a buyer, and put yourself in the position of let's say a mid-market buyer, not necessarily Harrods in this case, is it a turn-off for you the fact that a brand is already selling either on Amazon or on another marketplace, such as Tesco or Decathlon?
I think if it really depends on the store. It's hard for me to separate my experience from Harrods. It certainly would have been a deterrent in Harrods. Exclusivity, I think every department store is trying to create a degree of exclusivity and a point of differentiation. So I think you have to be quite careful. That said, you've also got to be commercially successful. So I think if you do have that distribution and that broader distribution, you really just need to think again, back to what I said earlier, about how you would position it differently for the department store that you are wanting to go to. Because if your brand is broad enough, you can present it in different ways. It doesn't need to be homogenized.
Understood. And remember, everyone, these answers are wholly subjective, and it's your brand and your brand journey which counts. And we offer this advice on the basis that you will ignore it. The question around selling on a marketplace is a really pertinent one, and I'll have a go at answering that. You have to make the decision for yourself in terms of discoverability of your brand, the fact that you're in business to make a profit and generate revenue to be able to make a profit. So the decision is for you. There is a move now towards being channel agnostic, where it's the customer who's deciding if I can find the brand there and if it can be delivered to me when I want it to be delivered at the price that I want, I'm happy. So that's a big role that marketplaces are playing. And there's a separate conversation to be had, which we don't have time for in this call, unfortunately, which is how you as brands from the island of Ireland can reach multiple retailers and customers in overseas markets by using UK and European distribution, remembering that you're also already in Europe. So that's us done. Rachel, we're handing back to you.
Brendan, can I just say one very quick thing that we haven't touched on for 2 seconds is social media. Using social media to build brand awareness. Classic case, somebody wanted a dress for Ascot, couldn't find it, went onto TikTok, saw a girl looking lovely, found the dress, went onto the website, bought it. So let's not forget how important social media is in building your brand awareness. Sorry, just wanted to add that.
Oh, that's absolutely perfect there, Jill. So just, and I might just plug again, our last 6 webinars have all been on building brand awareness on social media. So if there's any new attendees that are on this call, get onto our YouTube channel and you can hear from the likes of TikTok, Meta, YouTube, and so on about how important that is when building your brand overseas. So that was great. Thanks very much, Jill, for that. And guys, thank you so much for all of you joining and sharing your insights. I've learned so much, and no doubt our companies have as well, and will continue to do so through this recording. Guys, thank you for everyone that's taken their time out of their Thursday morning to come on and listen as well. And I hope you've all taken away as much as I have here. So guys, with that, this is our last webinar of our series. So I think we've done 8 altogether now at this point. So I'm sure all of our attendees will be happy to take back an hour of their day after listening to us for the last 8 weeks. But I will say, guys, if there's any further questions, I know we didn't actually get the chance to go through all the questions here. But if there's any other pressing things, do feel free to reach out to myself, and we'll try and get the answers where possible. But again, thanks to Rarely Heard Voices, and thanks to all of our speakers today. And I hope everyone has a lovely rest of their day.
Have a good day.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.